Greetings and welcome to this episode of Bring It On. My name is Bob Hayes and I'm going to be your show host for today. I have Kevin Mayer with me today. He is a candidate for election to the school committee at Whitman-Hanson. He is from Whitman, originally from Hanson, but lives in Whitman currently, and he's running for one of the two available seats in Whitman. Kevin, how are you?
Hey, Bob. How you doing?
Thanks for coming in today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Give the people watching today a little snapshot of Kevin Mayer. Start your school years, where you went to school, what you're doing. Right. I know this is a little bit difficult running for office. It's all out there for the people to see.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm hoping that they're getting. We're giving them something they want to see. They want to know who the candidates are and where they stand.
Gotcha. All right. So I'm Kevin Mayer, as you said. I grew up in Hanson. I moved there when I was, I think it was 8 or 9 years old, 4th grade. So I did 4th grade all the way through high school while I was living in Hanson. Graduated from Whitman-Hanson in 2006. And when I graduated, I went on to go to tech school for a year and a half. And after that, I entered the trades. I've been doing basically construction ever since. I own a fence company here in Whitman, Next Level Fence. Been doing that on my own for about 5 years now. So in 2014, I bought my house in Whitman. I consider myself a Whitman person now. You know, I've been here a while, so.
Okay, that's good. In fact, if my recollection is, and I probably had hair back then, I think I had coached you in basketball.
Yep, you absolutely did.
Your mom and dad, and you have a sister,
I have
if
a sister.
Remember correctly?
Yep.
So you're trying to jump right in both feet to be a good person that's going to come forward and help the town. Explain that a little bit.
I mean, the way I look at it is that I may have not been the best student at Whitman-Hanson, but I got out of it what I was looking to get out of it. It gave me, I have some teachers that I could mention that were just really pushed me in a direction where it was not necessary. They knew I wasn't going to go to college. They knew I knew that, and it was more of just some advice that I had gotten from a few of the educators there at Whitman-Hanson that kind of pushed me to take the path that I did. And like I said, I own a business here in town, so it's nice to be able to give back to the community and get involved, I guess you would say, especially being a little bit younger, get some, fresh blood in there that can, maybe offer a different insight on certain things and just another set of ears to listen and, learn from people like Fred and, even if I called you to pick your brain, something like that, it's just good I like to get involved, and I feel like it's a good way to start giving back to the community because the community's been good to me. I started my business about 5 years ago, and the amount of local work that I get is fantastic. So to be able to give back to those taxpayers and, give them a voice, from maybe a different perspective, I think would be a good thing.
So basically, a lot of people say that candidates, especially first-time candidates, if they're elected, come in with an agenda. Do you have any agendas?
I don't really have an agenda per se. I just want to, I would like to sit back and listen and learn. And if, when the opportunity arises, if I have an opinion, I have no problem giving it. I've never been the type of person that will sit back and be like, if I don't agree with you, I'll just tell you. So if I'm sitting there listening to certain things, and like I said, I'd be willing to learn from everybody there that's been doing this for a long time. I don't have a specific agenda, but what I would like to do is just be able to get involved, start to learn, how things are going with the committee and what's going on in the school district. And then from there, I can formulate my own opinions and offer my own advice and go from there.
Well, Kevin, I'm sure you heard, because you're out in the town, you're talking to a lot of the taxpayers from Whitman and probably Hanson too. It's a $63 million budget. What type of input are you getting from people out on the street? Because I think that's important. The reason I'm asking you, it's putting you on the spot, but the reason I'm asking you is I think input from the street gives you a cross-section of what the voters are thinking. I mean, you're going to obviously have a younger segment of voters that have young children. You're going to have a middle segment of voters that may not have as many young children. Then you're going to have a older section of voters my age that their children are long gone from schools. So it's kind of three different segments in a community. So you must be getting a cross-section of talk about it, because everybody talks about budgets this time of the year, because it's a juggle.
Yep.
Town budget, school budget, town budget, school budget. It's always a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I am out and about a lot, just going, whether it's going out to eat, dealing with people with my business. I think, like you said, you hit the nail on the head. The three different segments of people all have a different opinion. I think when you talk with people with young children, understandably so, they want the best education they possibly can have for their children. 100%. They want it. You start talking to people who may have children that just got out of school. They understand that you need to, the need for education is big. And whether you're doing it to go into the trades, whether you want to go to college, whatever it may be. And then as you get up into the older crowd, sometimes they're definitely, a lot of them are on a fixed income. They're afraid to see their taxes go higher, which is completely understandable. But I feel like you just need to find that balance amongst all of that. I mean, you run a business, I run a business. If I could go out and spend every dime that I have, that'd be great. You could buy everything you wanted, but you have to find that, all right, where can we spend this money? Where do we have to hold back on this money to keep everything where everything sustains itself? Because if you just spend, you're out of business.
Right.
So
needs and wants, more or less.
Exactly. But I think, like you said, you need to find a balance between all three of what the individuals want. Because again, if you're retired and you might just be getting your Social Security, you're scared to see it. Everybody panics when they hear taxes. But again, on the other end of things, the people who have kids just entering the school, it's very important to have all those resources for them, especially with the way everything is going nowadays with, technology and just all of that. It's all going to cost more money. So I guess you need to find a happy medium in that to make sure that kids still get a good education, but also you can't put a huge tax burden on people. I mean, Whitman's a blue-collar town. It has been forever. So you gotta, I guess, find a balance between, keeping the taxes, sort of where they are, and keep everything, also give them the resources that they need.
That's a very difficult balance, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sure
very
it is.
difficult.
No, I know.
So you're out there and you're talking, in fact, you talked about the trades, and Whitman-Hanson Regional School District is part of a vocational system as far as, ladies and gentlemen, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they're doing this at the high school. We have an outsourced vocational school. And Whitman, believe it or not, if my numbers are correct, sends the most amount of students to socio-vo-tech. Do you think that has any reasoning with your blue-collar worker analogy?
I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that people like myself, I wasn't a great student, and I realized that college wasn't for me. So I feel like a lot of people now are starting to realize that, there's a huge need for people in the trades, whatever it may be. There's a lot of lack of people out there doing this kind of work. So, and the pay is good. So you can make a good living doing something like that just as much as you can going to college and getting a degree and starting a career that way. I think that you need that balance.
So as I'm going to segue into this, you talked about getting a good education at Whitman-Hanson, and it kind of looks like you studied your way into it to going into your own business. You decided this is what you want to do, and this is how to be successful. You know how to budget?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how you would budget your own business, just like this document needs to be budgeted.
Yeah. I mean,
because it's difficult.
Yes, it is.
It's a $63 million budget. Yeah. It's not a small amount.
I mean, I deal with it every day, just like you do. There's times where things start to slow down. Wintertime for me, things get slow. Last year, at the end of the year, usually we're still going pretty good. Last year started to slow down a little bit. So you have to find ways to make, I have to make cuts on some things I'm spending money on. Like maybe I wanted to buy another machine at the end of last season. It wasn't in the budget, so I didn't buy it. Because you have to sit there and look, like you said earlier, needs versus wants. What do you really need? What's the foundation of what you need versus something that you want that you might not be able to afford at that time? So to me, anything is like running a business. Whether you're running local government, running an actual business, a school board, anything like that, it's all to do with how much can we afford, and if you can't, where are you going to get the other money? Because that's what I deal with. If I'm starting to fall short on some things, then I go out there and I start advertising. I start doing more to bring in more revenue. So obviously you're not going to advertise to get more money for the school committee, but it's just sort of the same idea, I guess is what I'm saying. Like if there's other ways to maintain revenue coming in, or if you have to, you don't want to make cuts. I don't want to say you want to cut anything, obviously, as far as the school department goes, because, again, education is very important. But it's obviously very close to running a company.
Well, it's amazing because someone might say, A fence company is a needs and wants business. If the first thing that's going to get cut is the fence, it's not something about heating a house. Fence is gone.
Yeah.
So you've lived it. You've kind of lived it.
You see it in waves. I mean, obviously during COVID time when, people were getting, stimulus money, things like that, people that and everyone was staying home, they weren't vacationing. It gave everybody their yard was their priority because we have to stay at home. We're going to be doing, stuff outside. Let's put in a fence. But now you see sometimes it's good, sometimes things slow down because like you said, it's not, unless you have a pool and you want to open your pool and you can't because you don't have a fence, like you said, it might not be a necessity. So there are definitely some things to think about like that.
So I guess my next question is, you're not afraid to cut a budget. You wouldn't be afraid if you were elected to say to the superintendent, through the committee itself, I think these cuts need to be made.
I mean,
explain that to us.
I would never, voluntarily sit out there and say, hey, we need to cut this, this, and this. But if it comes to it, and there are some things that you could possibly cut back, then yeah, because again, the needs of the children come first, obviously, as far as education goes. But again, we need to keep in mind the taxpayers as well. You don't want to start driving people out of town because they can't afford to stay here because the taxes are too high. I think, again, you need to find that balance. So no, if there was a time where you had to stand up and say, we need to make a cut here or a cut there, then absolutely, that's what you have to do. Sometimes it's hard. You don't want to do it, but sometimes you have to do things you don't want to do.
Right. With all town government, there comes a time when everybody has to make a decision. Department heads come forward, they give their budgets to the town administrator. The town administrator meets with all of them. Very similar goes on in a school district. The department heads or the principals come forward and say, we need this for our building, we need that, we need this. And it's a very complicated formula because of the $63 million that we're facing this year. When they come forward and say those things, do you think it should be all broken down by building to come up with the total formula? I know this is a difficult question.
I don't see a reason why not. I mean, if, one school needs this, the new middle school, or the old middle school needs this, the high school needs that, the elementary school needs this, I feel like you need to sit there and prioritize what's, the most important. Like you mentioned earlier, heat. Say like one of the schools has a heat pump going and it's coming into wintertime. That's going to take priority over maybe something else that can wait a little bit. So I think if you break it down by school and give everybody the opportunity to review the needs and go over it and prioritize where they need to spend the money, because like you said, you're dealing with a $63 million budget. It's a lot of money. So if you need to start moving money around to make things work, I feel like, everybody deserves to see exactly where the money's going to go and make a decision based on that.
As you probably heard, both towns are talking about 5-year plan. And by 5-year plan, they're trying to get a plan so it smooths out this basis this functioning of money that goes on every year at town meeting. The Madden group, I guess it's called, came into Whitman and said 5% should be a benchmark. Amazing, they came into Hanson and said 5% should be a benchmark, meaning that a 5% assessment for both towns would give a 5-year plan that could probably foster out more certainty when it comes to the towns. What do you think about that? Both towns paid an outside firm, and some of the administrators were criticized for it, but do you think it was a good idea or not?
I mean, I don't think getting someone else's input's ever a bad idea. Research on whether or not they're correct on that, I guess, would be a good thing. I think a 5-year plan to smooth things out isn't necessarily a bad idea to kind of alleviate, like you said, battling every single year over something like that. I would have to read into more about what that assessment actually means to understand it. But I mean, if it's never a bad idea to get somebody else's input.
Right, and that's kind of where I was going with that question. If you get the outside input, somebody who's not sometimes being too close to a subject is bad.
It's like going to a mediator or something like that. It's a perfect example of that, where you can get somebody else's input. You might not have to go by it, but getting an outside person that's not familiar with the situation but understands how budgeting works and everything, giving you some input, it's like it's fine to me. I think it's a good idea to get input any way you can from somebody that knows what they're talking about.
Okay. All right. Well, believe it or not, we're running almost out of time here. Look into the camera and tell the voters why they should vote for Kevin Mayer.
I think that it's just a different set of ears and maybe a different outlook on certain things. I would like to get involved, learn the process, learn the numbers, and just give a fresh set of ideas. And I think that that would be a good thing for everybody in town. Get somebody a little younger on there that has some ideas and can just give back and get involved.
Kevin, thank you. Kevin Mayer is a candidate for election for one of 2 seats this year in the Whitman-Hanson Regional School Committee. My name is Bob Hayes, and here at Bring It On, we look for your input. If you have a question, a comment, or a concern, you can contact me at bobhayes4433@gmail.com, or you can call me on my cell phone at 617-538-0189. This is a show that is trying to help the voters for 2024, so your input is definitely needed. Please call me if you have any questions. If you enjoyed the show, thank you. Stay tuned for the next episode of Bring It On.